Have you ever thought about a vintage camper? You're listening to the RV Life Podcast. I'm Dan Hunt with my incredible wife, Patty Hunt. And our guest today, well, guess what? He knows vintage. As a matter of fact, he and his wife are even the publishers of Vintage Camper Trailers magazine, and they are incredible.
They are, and I can't wait to talk to them because Dan and I have been traveling full time for over 2.5 years. In our 2002 Monaco, we've traveled around the country, and I want to ask them if they consider our RV vintage.
You know, It doesn't really matter if they consider it vintage. I consider it vintage because the definition of vintage to me is, does something break every single day? And I think we got a yes to that one.
Wow. Well, maybe we should ask them to define what vintage actually means.
Well, you know, we have had a lot of fun in our 2002 Monaco, and we've traveled across the country 3 or 4 times. And we really, really love the unit. But this year, we had a discussion about getting a new one or maybe putting some money in and upgrading our unit.
Yeah, so the final decision is that we are going to upgrade the unit. We'll redo the inside, and, well, let's talk about it more on next week's podcast, where you and I just discuss one of the things being the decision to upgrade the inside of our vintage RV.
You know, next week, it'll be the first week in June. And in June, we have a lot of cool things happening. We've got a big contest and giveaway for the month of June. And so we're looking forward to that. And we're doing the first show as a solo show. And we're going to really dig deep into that question. Should I put some more money into this RV, or maybe it's time to just go get another RV? Now that sound means it's time for today's fun fact. And our fun fact is brought to you by Open Road Resorts. There are 4 of them, and 3 of them are absolutely incredible. Not to knock the resort, because it is very, very nice, but it's not right next to the national parks. It's not up there in, I call it God's country. So Open Roads Resorts up there is really, really cool. And they are sponsoring today's fun fact. Patty, what do we got today for our fun fact?
Well, it's the year 1910, and this is when America's leading RV historian said that the modern RV industry began back in 1910.
Wow. All the way back in 1910. You know, the first RV, it was shown at Madison Square Garden at an RV show that's at Madison Square Garden. I don't think they have them there, or RV shows anymore at Madison Square Garden, but it was built to order. It could hold 11 people, and it was 28 feet long. That is really cool back in 1910. Now, fast forward to 2023, and guess what? 9 million households own an RV today.
That fun fact was brought to you by Open Road Resorts, and we're so excited to be able to go up to Montana and Idaho. We've not been there yet, and enjoy these magnificent resorts.
You know, right outside of the gates of Yellowstone, they are just beautiful. And I have been up in that area, and I've spent some time in my life up in that area. There is nothing like sitting outside, looking up in the sky and seeing a bazillion, jabillion, zillion stars.
Wow. Okay, that's a big number that I don't know where that came from, but it's time for today's guest. I'm really excited to talk to Paul and Caroline about all things vintage trailers.
You know, we really are looking forward to this. We've been talking to them offline. They're in the queue right now, getting ready to come in, and we're going to bring them to the RV Live podcast right after this.
The most important part of your RV is the roof. If your roof leaks, your trip and your RV get ruined. You can take it to a dealership or service center to be maintained at their expensive rates. Or you can maintain it yourself over a weekend for a fraction of the cost. Liquid Rubber RV roof products will keep you dry and leak-free. Visit shopliquidrubber.com/RVLife. Use coupon code RVLifePod15 off to save 15%. That's shopliquidrubber.com/RVLife.
National Indoor RV Centers with over 1,000 motorhomes available across multiple locations. National Indoor RV Centers continues to provide an outstanding hassle-free motorhome ownership experience. National Indoor is the #1 Newmar dealer in the nation and also features brands like Integra, Winnebago, and much more. Visit nirvc.com and become a part of the National Indoor RV Centers family. You're listening to the RV Life podcast. Our guests today have been married for over 20 years. He was in marketing and she, God bless her, was a teacher. They started a hobby by buying a vintage trailer, and that hobby turned into a full-time business that includes 2 books, a magazine, and running rallies all over the place. They now have over a dozen pre-1960s trailers that they show at rallies. Talk about being all in.
Today's guests are Paul and Caroline Lacitinola. You're going to have to pronounce your name.
I got to tell you, folks, this is an L with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, a whole bunch of letters after that. Paul, how do you say that last name?
Lacitinola, just like it looks.
I had it 10 minutes ago. I want to welcome the two of you to the RV Life podcast.
Thanks so much.
I'm going to ask Caroline a question. How did you meet a guy named Lacitinola? Where did you guys meet? Let's go all the way back to the beginning.
His mom introduced us, and I have to say on our first date, and he told me his last name, and I actually said, I can never marry you. I could never spell that.
Awesome.
Okay, so camping, you know, this is the RV Life podcast, so we're going to talk about camping somewhere, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years ago, something like that. You guys decided to buy a vintage trailer so you could take your kids out camping and have fun. Let's talk about sitting at the kitchen table. Now, in our case, I said, honey, we got to go. It's COVID's hit. We got to go. We'll see all the national parks. Let's talk about that conversation that you guys had at the kitchen table, talking about we're going to buy a camper.
Our conversation wasn't that long. We just didn't know what to do with little kids. And on the way home one day, I just saw a little old trailer and bought it. So that was there wasn't much of the conversation other than look at what I bought.
He's a man of action.
It sounds like it. So it was your idea, Paul. You just came home with it. Caroline, how do you respond to this? Or are you just used to this kind of spur of the moment thing?
I grew up with a dad who bought and sold his whole life, and it was nothing new to me. So it was just kind of normal. I'm like, oh, good idea. And so I was super excited. I grew up in Alaska. I wanted my kids to have that outdoor experience, and I thought it was fantastic. So I was excited.
We really kind of stumbled into it. It was just something that was inexpensive. It wasn't a big deal. It was a few $100s, literally. And I had always had old cars. So an old trailer to me was kind of cool. And then eventually we put the old trailer behind the old car and we thought, man, this is really neat. And so I wrote an article for a hot rod magazine about it. And the rest is kind of history. So.
Wow. So how many kids? How old were they at that time?
So at that time, we've got pictures back to them as babies sleeping in the hammocks, about 2 and 3 years old. And now my son is a sailor in the Navy, on the East Coast. So he's 20 years old, and my daughter's 19 and in college, or 18 and in college. So,
I think we got to get a hold of that picture of that old vintage trailer and the kids, and we'll put it up on our social media. Would love to get a hold of that.
We've got that. Absolutely.
People love that kind of stuff. Now, this is vintage. I'm going to assume that you really know how to work on a vehicle like that, like really, really work on it.
We've learned how to work on it with a lot of help from a lot of friends. I love old cars. I love old trailers. I'm a much better woods workman than I am a mechanic. So it's a lot easier for me to restore a trailer that doesn't have a motor as it is the cars that I like. So we gravitated towards the trailers, and early on, we bought and sold and flipped one, and we thought we were going to be rich. We thought, oh my gosh, this is incredible, and gosh, when you look back, we were hardly getting any money by today's standards for what they go for. But 15-ish years ago, and we were young, and the kids were little, and we were working 2 jobs, and we needed the money, and it was something that we kind of learned as we went how to do them.
That's an awesome story. So just for our listeners, some of our listeners are newer. I just want to define the trailer is something that's pulled behind a car. So there's no motor to it, making it easier for you to work on. Now, define for our listeners what vintage actually means.
So somewhere around the 1970s, they started changing the construction styles, and things became very square, much more plastics. And so somewhere there in the mid 70s is where most people cut it off. We say pre-69, but there are some in the 70s that still have kind of that vintage vibe to them. But certainly after that, the trailers just look different, and the materials are different. The warmth of the wood is gone. The roundness of the cute little canned ham is gone. The mid-century style of the Spartans is gone. And now you've just got white boxes, as we call them. And they're just very different. So that mid 70s somewhere.
Now, we are not trailer people. We are a Class A. We live full time in our Class A, and we travel around the country. So I guess by your standards, 2002 Monaco that we are completely restoring right now is not vintage.
It would not be vintage, but there is that interim category now of, all the stuff that's all over Instagram and everything, of the people that are restoring those, 90s and 2000s. They're still in good shape. Some of them well maintained, or at least restorable. And, they're putting the farmhouse style or whatever, they're doing their style of restoration. And so there's that whole new mid category. I don't even know what you call it, that is in between vintage and new,
So there are people, our listeners, that are brand new buyers. As a matter of fact, one of our sponsors, National Indoor RV, says that their customers turn their RVs over every 5 years. So every 5 years, those people or less, they get a brand new RV. Now, we've traveled with a lot of people and talked to a lot of people that just love these vintage RVs. What was the impetus for you guys to get into that vintage piece?
We love old stuff. What's better than bringing something old back to life? And the first little trailer we got must have been about 20 years ago. And it was right before Father's Day. And I was so excited because I restored it for my husband. I went to the fabric store and I bought fabric and I redid the cushions and put curtains in it. It was terrible, but I was so excited, and we camped in it. And so just being able to enjoy something that has a history, I think, has always been a big part of our life. And like Paul said, he's always been an old car guy. He grew up with old cars. cars. I can't even tell you how many old cars he's had. So it just is a lifestyle.
And I think the old part, the vintage part for us is as much or bigger of a part of the hobby than the actual camping is. I mean, it really is about finding them. I've been to LA this week to pick one up, and I leave when we're done with this to go pick another one up. And it's as much about the hunt and the find and restoring it as it is about the actual camping in them.
Well, I'm just going to put this out here to you. I'm not going to put you on the spot. If we drop the Monaco off and we come back and say 3 weeks, can you get that taken care of? Vintage is.
You'd be amazed how long it would take me to take care of that. We've got a list of projects.
Okay. So it's a no. We'll have to do it ourselves. We're doing quite as much. Now, in addition to going out and buying vintage trailers, you also started a magazine. When did you start the magazine and why?
Well, I said earlier that I wrote an article for a little. It's called Cruisin' News, and it's a local thing that. A local magazine that tells you when the car shows and car events are. And so I just wrote an article just because I thought it was cool. I had my old car and my old trailer and didn't really think much of it. And a guy contacted me and he said, "Oh, we've got some old trailers and we're going to be camping in them in a couple of weeks. You ought to come and check them out." And honestly, I thought to myself, how can this be? I've just invented this hobby. How can there already be people doing it? And I was really taken aback. And I went down and met with these folks who we were literally camping with last week, these same people that contacted us that first day. They're still friends. And found out that there was kind of this underground community of people that had an appreciation for these old trailers. And I was really blown away because here was, 6 or 8 of them in one spot. And I thought, man, this is crazy. How cool. And so I've literally written that article for that magazine every month ever since that for almost a dozen years. And at one point we thought we needed something similar for the trailering hobby. And if we started a little newsletter ourselves, then we could write off our camping trips and we'd produce this little newsletter. And so we did that. We figured we could last for a couple of years. If we didn't get one advertiser or anybody that cared about it, we could give it a shot. And in a couple of years, we were always in the black. And we thought, we'll do a special edition glossy issue. And we printed an actual magazine instead of the newsprint newsletter. And we got many more subscriptions and a lot of good feedback. And we just never went back to doing the newsprint version. We just stuck with the magazine and it's grown since.
And I will say the personal side of it, we really believe in being debt free. So we really looked at our budget. And when we did this, we still had 2 small kids because we're going into our 11th year of the magazine. And we had a couple deaths in our family. And after we kind of recovered from that, Paul said, "I've always wanted to do this." And when you have that kind of turning point in your life, when you realize life is short, we sat down at the kitchen table, and this was a long discussion. And we did. And I'm a numbers person, so we got out our bank statements. We looked at the printing costs. We did all of the research, and we did go into it with open eyes and with steps. And we met all of our goals, and so it made it viable to continue on. But being that debt-free really gave us that opportunity, and that is a big part of our story.
I'm listening to your story, and it reminds me to Jeannie Pettit. What's her last name? Camper Girl.
Pettit.
Jeannie Pettit, who owns Camper Girl magazine. And the story is very, very similar. That, she has always not been in debt. She went into it with what she called her eyes wide shut because she knew what was happening, but she wasn't aware of some of the expenses that came down the road when you did it. So I'm going to ask you the same question I ask her at this point is, did you have any experience at all running a magazine at that point?
None.
We had no idea. I took some graphics in high school, but everything that I learned there is no longer valid in the digital world. And I was in marketing as one of my careers. And so I was doing marketing and sales for an unrelated industry. So, I mean, on that level, a little bit, but literally when we look back, I mean, the grammatical and spelling errors and, I mean, just the silly stuff like that. But we were just churning and burning and didn't really know anything and we struggled through some printers when we went to glossy. That couldn't keep up with our production numbers. And, so we had a few challenges, but all in all, we've been pretty fortunate throughout the last over a decade now.
Okay. So on your website, there is a trailer, an old trailer, and it is purple. And it sort of reminds me of a train. It is purple, right? I saw it.
It's kind of blue, but yeah, it's a purplish blue. Yeah.
Okay, so that was kind of the discussion between Dan and I. I thought it was more blue, but it sort of looks like a train. Tell us about that trailer. Paint the picture for our listeners about that old trailer that is on the front of your website.
Yeah, so that one happens to be what's called a Westcraft trolley top. So it is definitely train-like. They also call them a lantern top on the East Coast because it does have those windows up top that are reminiscent of a train or a trolley. And so that one was restored by Funky Junk Farms in Southern California. They supply props to the movie industry, and they also are big trailer guys and friends and such. But they restored that one for a gentleman, and it sold a few years ago and changed hands. But it's the largest version of that style trailer, and that is one of the most desirable, kind of always one that I've been attracted to, that trolley top style. Unfortunately, one of the downsides to those is more windows, more leaks, and that's got as many windows as you can have in it. And so, from a durability standpoint, probably not the most durable trailer, but they are a beautiful trailer. And the models are recognized by how many windows they have up top. And I think that's a 5 or 6 window. I don't recall exactly, but they went all the way down to 3 window trolley tops, which was just literally a shorter version of that same trailer.
Well, I will tell you that trailer, it's just beautiful. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have Patty put a link to that trailer, the photograph of that trailer in the show notes so everybody can see what we're talking about. Blue, purple, whatever you want to call it. It is just really, really a piece of history. And it is so beautiful. I just love that picture. I mean, I looked at it for 5-10 minutes when we were doing some research on doing this show. Now, and I'm going to ask this of Paul and Caroline. I'm going to ask this next question. And I want each of you to answer because I think that each of you may have a different answer for it. You've been in this business for a long time. You have a website. You go to rallies all the time. You have a magazine. You've written a couple books. We'll talk about those after the break. Tell me the story of your very, very, very favorite trailer that you've ever seen. And why is that trailer your favorite? Paul, we're going to start with you.
Oh, man. I mean,
I know. I love putting people on the spot.
Yeah. A favorite that I thought it was going to be that I ever owned, but boy, that I've ever seen. I don't know. I mean, there's, one of the things is there's such a variety in the hobby, and we're infamous for not having contests at our events because how do you judge a totally perfectly restored 50s trailer with a updated, modernized, beautiful Spartan trailer or something, and there's just so much variety. I think one that impressed me most, and it's funny because they're both trolley tops. I guess that's not one if they're both, that's 2. But one of the first rallies we ever went to, and we met Chuck and Tony Miltenberger, who are, the godfathers of this hobby as far as we're concerned. And they were so inviting and invited us into their trailer and showed us. And so I remember that trailer vividly because to me, I'd never seen anything like it. And John Green, the guy that invited us to that first event, when I went out there, he happened to have a Westcraft trolley top. And maybe that's why I'm so drawn to that style of trailer, even though in the hundreds of trailers I've owned, I've never owned one. And I've owned everything else and then some that I've ever wanted to. But so I guess, a couple of those trolley tops are standouts to me, and thinking about it, I could name 10 more, but I'll just stick with those couple.
So
okay, I'm going to see if you, wait 1 second, Caroline. We're not going to get to you. Let me finish up with Paul here. So, Paul, you got to buy a trolley. Life is too short. You got to go out and buy one. And
I've got a trailer now that I absolutely love, so I think I'm kind of over it. But so we'll see.
all right, if you could send Patty a couple pictures of those trolley tops, we'll try to put those in the show notes. Okay, Caroline,
Sure.
It's your turn now. And here we go. We are going to have you answer this question, but you're not allowed to say trolley top.
I won't say that. So we have a joke in our family that I love the people. Paul, and I know all the people's names. Paul knows all the trailers. My daughter knows all the dogs. She knows the people by their dogs. And my son is whoever's giving out free food. So that's kind of our family joke. So for me, the trailers are never as important as the story that comes behind it. And so my favorite trailer is my Shasta. We got it from the original family. The lady is over 90 years old that sold it to us. And it's the trailer that my kids grew up in. So I get emotional over that. And that's my favorite trailer is my little Shasta.
Your little Shasta.
Okay, we're definitely going to need a picture of that because I don't even know what it is. We'll put a picture on social media. Now, when I first thought of vintage, and Paul, you and I had a conversation many months ago, when I think of vintage, Airstreams are what comes to mind. And they haven't changed a whole lot. So when you think of vintage, tell us, talk about Airstreams. Let's talk about that.
Sure. Well, Airstreams are absolutely iconic. And anytime we tell people that we're in the vintage trailer hobby or business, the absolute first thing they say is, "Oh, you mean like an Airstream?" Well, yes. Among others, Airstreams and Shasta are the two styles or brands that people think like everything's a Shasta trailer. You'll see a Jewel trailer for sale on Craigslist and they call it a Shasta. And Airstream's the same way. And they're both iconic. They're both, you've got your canned ham and your silver Twinkie, and they're both iconic shapes, easily recognizable. Shastas are the winged trailers. And so people are very, very familiar with those, and you're right. Very little has changed over the years to the untrained eye on an Airstream. Truthfully, there's a lot of changes, but to the untrained eye, they are still very similar. And if you want to sneak into a vintage trailer rally and you don't have a vintage trailer per se by the numbers, sneak in with an Airstream because we probably can't tell. you can sneak in with a 70s or 80s Airstream and nobody's going to be the wiser.
That is absolutely incredible. You're listening to the RV Life Podcast. Our guests today are Paul and Caroline. Their last name starts with an L. Just put the alphabet after that, and it'll all work out. After the break, we're going to talk about rallies. We're going to talk about boot camp workshops. We're going to talk about the CampNation Expo. We're going to give you some discount codes and much, much more. And we're going to do all of that right after this.
When traveling in your RV, how do you navigate? Do you use a paper map, a GPS, or do you use Google Maps? Our sponsor, RV Trip Wizard, has the solution, and it just works.
It just works. We love RV Trip Wizard, and we don't move 1 inch without first consulting with RV Trip Wizard.
And he truly means he doesn't move 1 inch. We literally had to move from one spot over to another spot. Long story. And
in the same campground.
In the same campground, literally one spot to the next. And he wanted to turn on RV Trip Wizard. I had to stop him, but really we use it almost all the time.
Okay, so Paul and Caroline, let's get back in. And at some point in your life, you were going to rallies, you're starting a magazine, you're writing articles for people, and somebody said to the other one, maybe we should start our own rally. Boy, that's a lot of work.
You want to take that?
I will just say it's the somebody is always Paul. He is the dreamer. It is always Paul. And I'm always dragging my feet, but running behind, trying to figure out how to make his dreams become a reality. So always Paul. And we just started with a camp out with some friends, and it just grew.
We called a park, and they were actually having a event called Tower Park. It was at Tower Park or Tower Fest. It was at Tower Park Marina in Lodi. And we called and we said, hey, can we get, a dozen sites or whatever? We want to bring some friends camping. And funny thing is, it was that same park that I went and met John Green at that first time that he called. And so they were having what they called Tower Fest, and they had some luau dancers and some snow cones and crafts or something. There was some festival going on. And so we said, well, we've got these cool old trailers. We'll bring a dozen of our friends and we'll kind of be a part of your event. And so we went down and did that. And the second year, we tripled in size. We maybe had 30 or 40 trailers. By the fourth year, we had a couple hundred. And by the fifth year, we had every site in the park. We had about 300 vintage trailers coming to that rally. And the guy that had started Tower Fest had moved on, that manager, and they weren't any longer doing the Tower Fest. So we thought, okay, well, now it's Trailer Fest. And so that's how I came up with the name. I didn't really, they weren't doing it anymore. We were doing it. We were renting the whole park, and we changed the name to Trailer Fest. And now that's our brand, the Trailer Fest Rally. But that's how that happened and where that started.
Okay, so that is a really cool story. And you guys are like us. Dan comes up with the ideas. I drag my feet. And then I realize I have to get on board and make it happen. That's very cool. Now, who are these rallies for? You already said that our 2002 Monaco does not classify as vintage. So who can come to the rallies? Do I need a vintage trailer?
Well, traditionally and historically, we've not even had enough room to fit the vintage trailers. As we find the bigger parks and we have more space now, some of our rallies, you can actually come in your 2002 Monaco. One of our rallies, we have about 35 of the big GMCs, the big 70s GMC RVs take a whole section, and they do a big event within our event. And so, yeah, typically it's for the people that are, we say, rescuing, restoring, and rallying in vintage trailers. And that's pretty much pre-70s. But whenever we can, we like the venues where we can allow anybody to camp with us. They might not be in what we call our vintage village, but they can come and they can do the potlucks and they can dress up and they can, do the crafts, whatever we've got going on. We've got a big rally coming up in Waco, Texas this fall, and they've got several hundred sites. So we'll have the vintage area, and then you could also come with your newer RV if you wanted and play with us, but just not be in the vintage village area.
And I would say that our motto is the trailers are the excuse. It's really about the people. We're like-minded people. We love camping. We love getting together. We love being present and sitting around a campfire and talking and interacting. And that's almost a lost art in our society. And so we very much are about the people. So sometimes people will call and say, I have an 85, I've redone it. And we're like, sure, there's always exceptions because it really is about the people and about the community that we've created.
Well, that's really, really great. And, Patty and I, as we travel around the country, are just going to have to stay in touch with you, because coming to a place like that, and over on our YouTube channel, we have a feature that we call Campfire Conversations. I'd love to just come around and do a video and really tell stories of all of these people that have these vintage trailers and all of those types of things. Now, you've got your big event coming up. It's called CampNation Expo. Let's talk about, when is that? And where is that going to be?
Yeah, CampNation Expo is the one thing we do that's very different from everything else. It's this August, the 10th through the 13th in Hollister, California, which is South Bay area. You might be familiar with Gilroy, the Gilroy Garlic Festival down in that mid part of the state. It's a annual event that we've done similarly for 7 years, but this year we're expanding into including the other aspects of camping, not just the vintage, the overlanders, the RVs, the kind of that mid category that we talked about of those 90s and 2000 trailers that people are fixing. But there's a lot of different styles of camping going on, not just vintage. Even like us, we have a modern slide-in pickup camper. We have a van. We have vintage trailers. We camp a lot of different ways. And we wanted an event that wasn't just exclusive to vans or just exclusive to vintage, but really gave people the opportunity to come and see some different styles of camping and learn how to refurbish, restore, repair what they've got, because as you guys know, when you're out on the road, stuff happens. And we've brought together a bunch of professional builders, repair shops, former teachers, and we do workshops and create camaraderie, have guest speakers all weekend long. You can actually come and camp with us. You don't just have to come for the day. You can actually come and whatever you have and camp with us for the whole weekend. And we've got stuff going on all weekend in the evenings and during the day. There's lots of workshops to go to.
So these are your education, and that's very important for us. I was also a teacher like you, Caroline. So these are boot camp workshops, and I think there's one day of them. But if somebody wants to come for the weekend, or they throughout the weekend?
So there's 2 days of workshops, and there's a variety. Some are more formal classroom style, and then some are what we call our field training events, which are actually at the people's sites where they're going to be, maybe demonstrating products or something specific to them. And then we've got the more general boot camp workshops. And then we've got a pavilion with guest speakers. And so there's lots of stuff going on all over the park. There's exhibits, Airstream that we talked about. They're coming. They've got several sites, and they'll be displaying all of their new models, or about 6 of their new models I think they're bringing. So you'll be able to see brand new Airstreams, professionally built adventure vans, those styles. All Good Equipment Company is debuting a new teardrop that they're producing. We've got gear from, Rhino Adventure Gear. I mean, just a variety of interesting camping, building opportunities.
Now, I was looking at the schedule of different seminars of your boot camps and that type of thing. And you have, I'm going to say, the widest range of topics that I might have ever seen, because Patty and I have been on panels all over the country at different rallies and different RV events. But you guys are covering everything from sewing to solar and almost everything in between. Can you talk a little bit about, specifically, let's just pick out 2 or 3 of those topics that are maybe off the beaten path? I mean, sewing, that's something that I would have never even thought of.
Actually, one of our most popular classes. Yeah, one of our more popular. So we set up a whole room with a gal that has a sewing shop out of Buellton, California, the Creation Station. And she's nuts. I mean, she's crazy as a $3 bill, and we love her. But she sets up and works side by side with you, hands-on, with everything from just understanding how to use your sewing machine that a lot of people don't know, how to do, to actually creating some projects. And so when you're restoring or refurbishing anything, you've got curtains, you've got upholstery, you've got, there's lots of aspects to a restoration that may need upholstery. And so it really is one of our most popular classes. And we have people that have come year after year that just sit in that room for 2 days and work with Dawn and just love it.
We had a gal last year redo her whole trailer curtains. Like, she brought the fabric. She knew she was coming. Her husband went to the classes, and she went to the sewing room, and she made curtains for her trailer. And she was so happy and so excited to have that detail of how to get the corners right, or, she was thrilled.
And had a coach the whole time, she came and for 2 days had a coach that helped walk her through it. but she could still say that she did it herself. And in that same vein, we have somebody that's actually teaching curtains, somebody that's actually teaching blinds, somebody that's actually teaching upholstery along with the sewing stuff. So yeah, it's a big part of it. It's we have one whole room dedicated to that type of, actually 2 rooms. We have 2 rooms dedicated to just soft upholstery.
That's awesome. And after this podcast, you might need to add an extra room because our listeners are going to want to come in just to make curtains. Dan and I replaced all of the curtains in our RV. Lucky for me, my mom has been sewing forever, so she worked me through it. I had to go back to the house and sit and sew them. And that's really exciting and makes a big difference. But now I just want to, for our listeners, Paul and Caroline have agreed to a discount for CampNation Expo and for the magazine subscription. So tell us a little bit about that, and then I'll tell people where they can reach you.
Sure. Our goal with CampNation is that people come and experience it. It's not something we do online. You can't watch the video. There's lots of that stuff out there, but we've really created an in real life experience where you can create that camaraderie with the teachers and the experts and the professionals that are there. So when you have a question 6 months from now, you actually know Denny Stone from SoCal Vintage Trailer, and you can call him and ask him a question. And so CampNation Expo is really about coming and being a part of it. And so we created a discount code for RV Life. It's RV Life Expo, and it knocks $25 off the cost of coming and camping with us for the weekend. And so you can bring any rig you've got. We've got full hookups. We've got tent only, tent and teardrop, no hookup site. You can bring a new trailer, an old trailer, a vintage trailer, whatever you want. But the coupon code RV Life Expo will just knock $25 off the cost of coming, and you can come and join us.
That's awesome. And I really appreciate you offering that to our listeners. Now, people can reach you where? I'll put the website in our show notes, and I'll put the discount code in there. So anybody listening, it'll all be in the show notes. Where can people reach the two of you?
Sure. Our main website is vintagecampertrailers.com. And you can also subscribe to the magazine there. And it's another discount code of 30% off one of our digital subscriptions. So we do it in both digital and print, but a lot of people that travel would just like to stay in touch with the digital. So the coupon code RV Life, all capitals, will get you 30% off on that subscription. And our other website would be CampNationExpo.com if you just were interested in the expo.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you for offering that to our listeners. And anybody listening that has other questions and wants to reach out to Dan and I, they can reach us on Instagram or Facebook or our website. Now, Instagram and Facebook is RV Life Podcast. And you can reach us on our website, which is Exploring Through Our Lens. And again, everything will be in the show notes.
And we'll put all the information for Paul and Caroline. Let me try this. Lacitinola. Okay, I'm just going to say Paul and Caroline alphabet. We're just going to stay with them. They're going to stick around with us because after the break, we have a trivia question from the Lucy movie about vintage campers. They actually had a camper back in 1950 something. And I got to tell you, very, very interesting. We're going to do that and talk about a lot more stuff. We're going to actually hear from Patrick Buchanan from RV Life in a few minutes. We'll do all of that right after this.
Does dropping your motor coach off at the truck stop full of semi-trailers for new tires give you nightmares? Eliminate the unknown and get your new motorhome tires mounted while you watch at your campsite or wherever you are parked. Motorhometires.com takes care of the entire process for you. We come to you with your new tires, mount them, add balance beads, and we even dispose of your old tires. With motorhometires.com, you'll also enjoy great prices and new tires with guaranteed fresh date codes, and enjoy sweet dreams instead of truck stop nightmares with your friends at motorhometires.com.
Protecting your RV investment means being ready for anything. An extended RV warranty from Wholesale Warranties is the best way to make sure that if an RV failure happens, you can afford to get back to enjoying the RV life as soon as possible. RV warranties are available for motorhomes, fifth wheels, and travel trailers, new and used, across the U.S. Visit wholesalewarranties.com for a free personalized RV warranty quote today and hit the road with peace of mind tomorrow.
You're listening to the RV Life Podcast. I'm Dan Hunt with my incredible wife, Patty Hunt, and we are so happy to have Paul and Caroline Applebit with us today. And we are just having a great conversation about really, really old campers and that kind of stuff. We got a trivia question from our Facebook page that came out today, and it's actually about the Lucy movie. We're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. You know, but I just want to come back, and I'm gonna ask Paul real quick. You know, Airstreams. Let's just talk Airstreams for a second. If I bought a 2022 Airstream, I can come and I can be vintage with you guys, right?
Well, you can't exactly be vintage, but you can probably come. And yeah, especially to our bigger, our San Dimas event now is 280 vintage trailers. And we've got room there, and we've got room in Waco, Texas for new rigs, especially at those parks where we've got lots of sites.
So tell me, of all of these events and all of the things that you've done, is there any place or anything or any time of the event in a rally like that that's your favorite? It's like, what are you looking forward to?
Saturday night. when all of our requirements and all of our obligations and what we've committed to provide for our guests have been completed, and we're just sitting down. We usually walk through the campground and stop at everybody's campfires and just visit. And that is my favorite time, is Saturday night, when I can finally exhale, because you're pretty much on from Wednesday through Saturday night. And so it's just my favorite time is Saturday night.
Yeah, between checking people in and pancake breakfasts, and our last rally, we had Pinewood Derbies and a carnival, and and so we're going. And then Saturday night, we typically have some big event, which is usually live music and a big dance or whatnot. And so we had a tribute band at the last one, and so that is our fun time that we're kind of done, and now it's time to go to the big party Saturday night and enjoy that. So,
and Dan and I have done events before, so we could certainly absolutely totally relate to that. For people who've never been part of putting on an event, there's so much to do. And I do love, like you said earlier, life is short, and being able to sit down and just be with people and enjoy people. That's probably the biggest thing for me with RVing, is that just sitting down, talking to people, enjoying people. So I could totally relate to that. So Saturday night.
Uh-oh, I know what that sound is.
It is time for the RV Life Pro Tip with Patrick Buchanan.
New RV Life Trip Wizard customers are often surprised to see how many campgrounds are displayed on the map. To help narrow the selection of which campgrounds to add to your trip, use the filters feature built into the research menu. You can filter based on your preference of park type, rating, reviews, hookups, amenities, price, and club memberships, just to name a few. Virtually every part of the RV lifestyle can be identified and filtered to show you the campgrounds, RV parks, state parks, and more that are important to you. You'll find much of the same filtering available on the RV Life Pro mobile app as well for those spur-of-the-moment journeys. Create your best RV trip with the best filtering available. I'm Pat Buchanan with your RV Life Pro Tip of the Week.
Thank you, Pat Buchanan. We use the filtering feature all the time. It is great when you're in the middle of a trip and you want to stop somewhere, you want to take a detour somewhere, you need to stop for gas, find a campground. The filtering is an absolute must when you're planning a trip.
Okay. I was talking to you earlier, Paul, and you said you're going to be doing a show at Lake of the Springs in Central California there sometime later this year. We were there last year, and I got to tell you, we had a very eerie experience there.
Eerie?
That's good to hear. That's encouraging.
The word eerie is a little odd, but there's a lot of deer there.
Yes.
And they are exceptionally friendly. Let's say it that way.
I said it's eerie because it's like Casper the Friendly Ghost, but there it's Casper the Friendly Deer. And I'm actually going to put a link in the show notes to a short video that we did where we were doing the close of our TV part of what we do over on Exploring Through Our Lens. And the deer literally walked right up in between the two of us and said, "It's time for my close-up, Mr. DeMille." So it's a great campground. And if you have never been to Lake of the Springs, or for the listeners out there, you guys are going to tell me about the show that you're going to do out there.
We're kind of excited about this because it's kind of back to camping. A lot of our shows are in fancy RV parks and, big fancy swimming pools, and right downtown we walk to restaurants and it's barely camping. But Lake of the Springs is a much more, pine trees and deer and dirt. And so we've got a Western theme for this. And one thing I can say about Trailer Fest Rally is you've never been to Trailer Fest twice. And we are a heavily themed event and everyone is different. So we've done everything from, we've had proms, we've had a wedding theme where we had Elvis do wedding vow renewals for hundreds of couples with tiered wedding cakes and boutonnieres and tuxedos and the whole deal. We've just, over 10 years and several rallies a year, I can't bore you with all the different themes we've had, but for this one, it's a Western theme, but it can't just be a Western theme. It's got to be a spaghetti Western because that's vintage and because I wanted to have a spaghetti feed. So we're having a spaghetti feed potluck Thursday night. We've had cornhole potlucks where you had to bring a corn-inspired dish. We've got a pickle coming up, get pickled at Pismo, at our Pismo rally coming up. So we have crazy themes. People dress up, people come in costume to the events. They come in costume to the dance. We've got a group called the California Cowboys playing Saturday night, who are a A-rated local band, Western band. It's just a ton of silly fun.
Yeah, and it's so fun because as you're talking about that, and you're talking about the crazy themes and the silly fun, Caroline's like, actually, we're watching you guys, and Caroline's actually sitting behind you saying, "Oh, that's all him. It's not me. It's all Paul."
It is all Paul. He never stops thinking of new ideas. I don't think he really sleeps. I think he's coming up with things in his subconscious all the time. Well,
you talked about our favorite part of the rally, and honestly, some of the stuff I just dream up and then I put it on the website and I don't really think it through. And like the corny cornhole potluck, I thought when that started coming around, I thought that's going to be horrible. What are we going to eat? And it turned out to be fantastic. So for me, the joy is seeing the silly ideas come to life and work. Our last rally had a car show theme, and so we had Pinewood Derby racing. Well, I don't know how many guys want to make a Pinewood Derby car and race it. I mean, I don't even know if that's going to work. I don't know if anybody's going to show up. And we had a scout group come with the professional track to run it with big screen TVs and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there going, man, I hope somebody made a car. 135 cars entered into that race. It took all day.
Wow.
And we had trophies and, it was a blast. But God, you go into that. I don't know if anybody's showing up.
I think, Paul, you're my new best friend because I
You'll be sorry. I'll put you to work.
And I have to say that I would be friends with Patty because I can see her in the background doing all of this. And maybe it's our teacher personality. We're trying to figure out, okay, how is that going to work? How are we going to make his dreams a reality? Ha!
Yeah. Exactly.
As Patty always says to me, fix it and edit. And, in the movie business, that's what they say. We make a mistake, we'll fix it and edit. Now, if you are going to Lake of the Springs, the one piece of advice that Patty and I have for you is if you bring your cell phone, you need to use it at the very, very, very top of the hill. There is a 10-foot by 10-foot box at the top of the hill. That is the only place within 20 miles that a cell phone works. So you know what? It's really kind of a good thing to go someplace and be unplugged. Go for the weekend. Go back to the 50s, go back to the 30s and 40s. Well, maybe you don't go back that far, but go back and just have a good time being there. And, maybe just check out that cell phone because frankly, they don't really, really work there. Uh-oh, there's that sound again. It's time for this week's question of the week. Patty has our question of the week for us.
I do. And this question is actually coming from my mom. So we're here with my mom today, and she wanted to know, in the 50s and 60s, did they really take China in the movie called The Long, Long Honeymoon?
Wait a minute. Hold on. I'm a movie guy. I'm a television guy. The real title of that movie is not The Long, Long Honeymoon. The real title of that movie is called The Long, Long Trailer.
Well, you go down and tell that to my mom. So we'll see how that plays out. Maybe I'll roll the camera on that. But you guys are certainly familiar with the movie, right? And for those listeners that aren't, Lucile Ball and Desi Arnaz are married and they're going on their honeymoon, and there are a bunch of people in this trailer unpacking all of her wedding gift. And back in the day, from what I understand, people got lots of china and crystal and who knows what else. But would they have been able to take all that stuff to your knowledge?
Well, the big boom of vintage trailering and trailers like that was after World War II. And so you had an abundance of material left from manufacturing aircraft, and people started building trailers. And it went hand in hand with the society that men were coming back from the war, women were leaving the workforce to go back into the home. But you might need to travel to go find a job. There might not be a job in your hometown where you grew up, but you could get this trailer and stay in a trailer park and live for 3, 6, 10, 12 months on a job until you could get set up. And so a lot of the bigger trailers, like that's a 54 Redmond New Moon in the movie The Long, Long Trailer, and trailers like we have a 1955 Spartan Manor, and it's a 28-foot trailer. But back in the day, that would have been a house, not a camper. And we camp in it now, and we've added all the modern amenities underneath, so it still looks like it did in 1955, but we've added holding tanks and 12-volt systems and flat screen TVs that are hidden behind stuff. And so back in the day, it probably wouldn't have been unheard of to take your china and your, maybe all of your personal possessions would go in that trailer. The other big question that we get is, how did they tow those trailers back in the day? And, it's twofold. All they had was those cars. So yes, they did tow them. There's 2 cars used in the movie, The New Moon. And if you're a car guy, you can kind of tell one's a Ford and one's a Mercury. And the Mercuries had much larger engines. So some of those inclines at Yosemite that you see them taking were actually done with the Mercury, and they're filmed from further back, so it's harder to tell. Some of the close-up shots, I think, are more the Ford. But the tow vehicles were what they had. They might use the trucks more, but they weren't moving them as often. They were staying longer term, and they weren't going 75 miles an hour down a 5-lane freeway. That just wasn't happening. So they might trudge along at 35, 40 miles an hour to get that thing places.
My aunt and uncle were married and were.
And I'm going to dig a little deeper into the movie. The movie was made in 1954. It is a classic. The movie we're talking about officially is titled The Long, Long Trailer. Some people call it The Long, Long Honeymoon. Some people, I think, Paul, you just referred to it as the Long Moon. So a lot of people refer to the movie as a lot of different things, but the official title is The Long, Long Trailer. It's from 1954. Now, the unit, and Paul, you're going to tell us what that is again. It was 36 feet long. There's two reasons for it to be 36 feet long. So I'll tell you the movie reason. You tell me the RV reason.
Oh, I don't know the RV reason. And I think it was at least 36. It might have even been more. There's lots of different accounts. And we used to have one, but I don't even remember what it was.
It was long.
It was long. It was long and long.
Yeah, they are very big. Well, the reason that they picked that trailer over one of the other trailers that they were considering is this one had a better reason to shoot. If it's 30 feet, they had that little bit of extra depth that they could shoot a lot of the interiors actually in that trailer, as opposed to going into a studio and doing them. Now, one of the other things that they portrayed in the movie that doesn't really happen in real life is Lucy was in the trailer while they were driving up one of those roads in Yosemite, and she was cooking dinner from the trailer while they were driving along. Paul, talk to me about that.
So there's a couple of things that are interesting from that movie that aren't in real life. And I think back in the day, you could actually ride in the back of the trailer. I don't know in the 50s if you could or not, but earlier you certainly could. But yeah, that would never happen today on anybody's wildest imagination. There's also a scene in the trailer where Ricky trips in the step down from the kitchen into the living room, and that was literally put to have a trip fall gag in the movie. There is no step down in a New Moon trailer. Some trailers have something similar, but not in a New Moon. So that's a total fabrication just to be able to do that stunt. And my understanding is there was, as typically, 2 or 3 trailers, and one was a cutaway trailer that ended up on the beach in Mexico or something, and they put a sliding door in there that they had originally used as a cutaway to film scenes without having to be inside. I also believe that they painted the interior of that one white because it's very hard to film against bare wood if everything's orange. And so our New Moon actually had the birch interior, which is like old trailers, but that one has more of a white or a gray wall inside, which I believe they probably did to make it easier to film.
Well, my favorite scene in this, and I'm sitting there watching with my mother about 6 months ago, and I had seen it before. She has seen it, I don't know how many times, this movie. My favorite scene is where she's collecting the rocks. And again, for our listeners, we're not talking about like small hand-sized rocks. We're talking about very large rocks. And she just kept collecting them. I'm going to imagine that the weight that you could take in a trailer like this was probably limited, or wasn't it? You said that they were able to have the china and stuff. So to your knowledge, would they have, been able to carry a lot of stuff in this trailer?
No more than like a modern trailer. I mean, it's still, there's still limits. I don't think you'd want wheelbarrows full of rocks. The main thing about vintage trailers is a lot of people have a perception that they were super heavy. And I don't really find that to be true. I mean, there's so much stuff in new trailers. A lot of times, and there's no science to this, but a lot of times they're pretty similar. A 28-foot trailer, new or old, isn't some big dinosaur if it's an old trailer. I mean, the new ones weigh about the same. They have probably more junk in them,
That's good to know. I try and collect small rocks, like we went to a gem area in California, I think it was. And
Nevada,
is that where we were? Can't keep track. Just collect small little rocks here and there, and Dan gets a little crazy about that.
Well, when we pull into a place called Gemstone, Nevada, and we're gonna boondock overnight, and I come back, I'm doing something, and I came back to the picnic table that we had in front of the RV, and literally it was full of rocks. And I'm like, what are you doing with those? Because they're not coming in here. I felt like Ricky on that. It was really, really something. You know, Paul, Caroline, it has been great to talk to you guys today. We wish you the best of luck with your rallies that are coming up. You can get all that information on our website or in the show notes, right, Patty?
Correct.
Our website and the show notes. You can go to their website. We'll have the links to all of that right in the bottom of the show. So again, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm Dan Hunt, and you're listening to the RV Life podcast. I'm with my incredible wife, Patty Hunt, and I got to tell you, I can't say enough about this woman. She does everything. I come up with, it sounds like we're talking about our guest today, but I come up with all these wild things that we are going to do, and she figures out how to get them done. So we have had speaking arrangements. She changes our things all around. I got to tell you, she is absolutely incredible. You're listening to the RV Life podcast. We truly appreciate everybody who listens to the podcast. Listen every week. You can sign up and get a notification. So when a new episode comes out on Wednesday morning, you'll be able to get that as well. I'm Dan Hunt with my incredible wife, Patty Hunt, saying have a great rest of today.
And an even better day tomorrow.